Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining our discussion. My name is Ebony Walton, a statistician at the National Center for Education Statistics. NCES is a premier statistical agency that collects data on the condition of education across the country and internationally. One of the most known projects at NCES is the National Assessment of Educational Progress, or NAEP. It's also known as the nation's report card. Today, we're going to cover a topic that you may not be familiar with, survey questionnaires. I'm joined by my colleague, Jamie Deaton, who is also a statistician at the National Center for Education Statistics. And I'm joined by Principal Rita Graves, who is serving at Lamar High School in Houston, Texas. Jamie's going to cover the development and purpose of survey questionnaires, while Principal Graves will talk about her experiences with NAEP and with our questionnaires. Throughout this presentation, I'm going to provide some insights into how NCES reports findings from these questionnaires. Throughout our discussion today, if you have any questions, feel free to leave your question in our comments box, and we'll address it at the end of this discussion. So let's go ahead and begin with an overview of survey questionnaires. Jamie, what are they?
So, Ebony, in addition to achievement data, NAEP asks participating students, teachers, and their school administrators to answer questions about educational experiences, instructional practices, and school structure and resources. This data provides insights into the relationships between students' experiences and achievement.
Great. So could you give us a little bit more information about the types of information that we collect in these questionnaires?
Absolutely. There are three categories for the types of data that we collect through the NAEP questionnaires. The first is student reporting categories to supplement demographic information. And this allows us to conduct deeper analysis on factors like race and ethnicity and socioeconomic status. Next are other factors that provide context for the achievement results, including courses taken, teacher demographics and experiences, other topics related to students in schools, and educationally relevant factors outside of school. Last, there are subject-specific questions, which vary by the NAEP subject assessed. For example, if a student is taking the mathematics assessment, he or she will receive questions related to their mathematics studies.
Great. So these are very, very deep topics. Could you provide a little bit more insight into the development process?
Sure thing. So to develop questions that fit within these categories, there are many things that we consider. One of the most important things we think about is the burden for participating students, teachers, and school administrators. For example, we examine the overall reading load and the ability for participants to accurately and easily respond to the questions being asked. This is especially important for our youngest students, which are fourth graders taking NAEP. When we're developing questions, we also think about our ability to report on trends or how things have changed over time for students, teachers, and schools. We consider things like, has this question been administered in a previous assessment? If so, how long is that trend line? Is this information still relevant for today's students and schools? And for new questions, will the content still be relevant in the years to come? Finally, we also look at the ability to compare responses across grades and subjects. So let me show you a quick snapshot of the extensive development process we go through to ensure the information we obtain is objective, valid, reliable, and of high quality. We start with pre-testing activities, including cognitive one-on-one interviews with students, teachers, and school administrators to understand how respondents interpret questions as well as response options with those questions. We also complete pilot studies, which you see in the middle, which are essentially practice runs with NAEP schools and students to see if any changes need to be made before questions are included in operational assessments.
Great. So again, this seems to be a very, very rigorous process. A lot of thought is into it. But now let's go ahead and make this conversation a little plainer with giving some examples of the types of questions students, teachers, and school administrators answer.
Absolutely. And it's really a range of topics to help us understand students' educational experiences in and outside of the classroom. For example, we have asked students to tell us things like how often they feel they understand what their teachers are talking about in class, or how often they use the internet for homework at home. We have asked teachers about their years of experience and their opportunities to participate in professional development. For school administrators, most often principals, we ask questions including topics of school, topics of school courses and the availability of resources. I also wanted to point out the transparency of NAEP questions. Unlike our test questions, survey questions are not considered secure, which means we're even able to post them and share them with the general public before pilot studies and before operational assessments. And of course, we keep them posted and publicly available afterwards as well.
Great.
So, and I also wanted to mention that respondents can elect to skip any question that they do not want to answer as well.
Great. So again, this is on a volunteer basis.
Yes.
But the information, again, is so valuable. And given all of the components, can you let us know who's involved in the development process? There's so many things that could be asked. Who's involved in selecting these items?
Sure. So there are many cooks in the survey questionnaire kitchen, and there are multiple reviews throughout the survey questionnaire development process for fairness and accessibility, and to ensure undue burden is placed on the respondents. These reviews are not only completed by NCS and our contractors, the questionnaires are also reviewed by various committees and teams that are made of education researchers, classroom teachers, and subject area experts.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. So again, it seems to be a very comprehensive process with lots of people involved so that we can provide high quality data. So now I'd like to turn our discussion to Principal Graves, who has some firsthand experiences with NAEP. And she can give us a little bit of insight into her experiences participating in NAEP and also the value of NAEP questionnaires. Principal Graves?
Hi. Yeah, like Jamie mentioned earlier, the surveys are, there are separate survey questionnaires that are completed by students, teachers, and school administrators. Students complete their questionnaires at the same time they complete the assessment, so it's one seamless process for them. And then teachers and school administrators are sent a link to do their surveys on an online NAEP platform at their convenience. It's extremely valuable information that we gather by participating in the questionnaire, because many researchers will study either educational experiences or study achievement, but with the NAEP assessment and the questionnaire, those things are looked at concurrently.
Wonderful. Thank you for that note about the concurrent data collection, that NAEP is collecting both cognitive and contextual information at the same time. So given all these data and your experiences, could you let us know what types of data you found interesting?
So one of the things I was able to do with some of our aspiring school leaders is look at how you could use that data to inform decisions about school practices. We saw a rise in schools double blocking mathematics and increasing the time students were in mathematics instruction. And I worried about the opportunity cost of that. It took them out of math, or took them out of fine arts, and it worried me that opportunity cost was great and that we really didn't have a lot of data to inform that. So I took them to the NAEP Data Explorer, and we looked at the relationship between average score and the amount of time kids were spending in mathematics each week. And while that isn't a full, causal relationship, there is a connection that can move our research to kind of the next stage.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that concrete example of how you were able to use our questionnaires to inform your decisions that you made. And as you noted, NAEP data, we aren't designed for causal statements, but we do provide a valuable resource to describing the condition of education. And again, we're able to see how they're associated with performance. And that is just a wonderful example of how to apply the data that we collect into your own experiences. In addition to various researchers using data, NCES also produces reports that describe some findings from our contextual questionnaires. And so I would like to share just a few examples of some contextual results from one of the reports that we released a few months ago on student views. And in this report, we discuss how students' positive views related to mathematics, reading, and science trended over time and how they vary across the country. And so here I'd like to just show you one quick chart about the percentage of students who reported that math was one of their favorite subjects. In this chart, you're going to see two lines. The top line is the percentage of students who are high performing students, those who perform at the 75th and 90th percentile in NAEP. And then you have the bottom line, which shows the percentage of students who are performing at the 10th and 25th percentiles, or at the bottom of the distribution. And what you see are the proportion of students, whether they're lower or higher performing, who reported that math is their favorite subject. One thing that you can clearly see is that there is a difference between the two groups, that higher performing students report on average liking math at a higher rate than lower performing students. Another thing that you're going to notice, as indicated by these asterisks, is that the proportion of higher performing students that say they like math as one of their favorite subjects is increasing over time, while the proportion of lower achieving students is not really changing over time. And we see this pattern across the grades. So if we go to grade 8, we'll notice kind of the same pattern, where 25% of higher performing students reported that math was their favorite subject in 2009, and that proportion is increasing over time to 28%. While lower achieving students, that proportion isn't changing over time. And then we see it again in grade 12, where higher performing students are reporting liking math, and that is growing over time, while it's in fact shrinking. The percentage is decreasing for lower performing students. We find these information just very valuable, again, to start the investigations into what's happening into the context of learning and student engagements in these subjects. It's just a starting point, but we find that this information can be very rich. Another piece of information that we collect are on school course taking. And in this chart that I'm about to show you, we're looking at 12th graders course taking in science. And what we're able to tell with our questionnaire data is how the proportion of students who report saying that they took 3 science classes, biology, chemistry, and physics, how that's changing over time. And what you noticed is in this 6-year span between 2009 and 2015, there are more students reporting that they're taking 3 science classes by the time they hit 12th grade. And so again, we find that this information is very valuable to provide context. So while we're seeing, no performance gains nationally, we are seeing this trend that students are receiving more science coursework over time. And that just adds another layer into the information that we know about students' educational experiences. So, Principal Graves, could you let us know of some other course-taking data that you've looked at in your time using NAEP?
Sure. One of the things we were looking at is, did we have enough students participating in algebra before high school? And so, I could use the course-taking data from NAEP along with the comparable schools group information that I had from my state, and look at, is there potential to move a few more kids into algebra and get that early start?
Great. That's awesome. So again, these data have practical use for people in the school, at the school level, but also at the national level, or you could be a parent and just want to know how your student compares across the country. One other way of kind of analyzing the value of student questionnaires is looking at another report that NCS published recently on computer use. And so in this report, we look at how students engage with computers in and outside the classroom doing various activities, and how these activities vary across jurisdictions. And so in this chart, what you're going to notice are 4 bars that provide the minimum percentage of students and the maximum percentage of students that use the computer to do these various activities. In the middle, you'll see a line that indicates the national percentage. So in the case of using the computer to build or practice vocabulary, 16% of the nation, 16% of students nationally use the computer to do that. But then you see this variation across the states where the jurisdiction with the majority of students using the computer to build vocabulary, 34%, is very different from the jurisdiction with the smallest percentage, which is 7%. So there's this huge array of computer usage across the states for using a computer to build or practice vocabulary. If you move along the other activities, again, you see this kind of wide dispersion. So depending on what state you're in, you'll see different frequencies in the proportion of students using the computer to complete these different tasks, access websites in class, conduct research. And again, this is of value to you all, so you know how you compare across the jurisdictions. So Principal Graves, again, I would like to compare to you. Now, you are part of Houston, which is one of our trial urban district assessments where we specially report information for your specific tutor. Could you let us know how these questionnaires are valuable to you in that way?
Yeah, it's really nice to be able to look at our performance against other urban districts and recognize that we have similar demographic trends. We can look at what is the rate at which we're closing our achievement gap and how does that compare to other urban districts across the country. And we can even break it into smaller components that look at parts of our population against the performance of parts of the population of other urban districts. So very helpful to us to see how we're performing against other school systems in similar parts of the country.
Great. That's awesome. Thank you so much for that description of how valuable it is for you to be able to compare yourselves with other districts using this resource, NAEP survey questionnaires. So at this time, I'm looking to see if there are any questions left by our viewing audiences. But before we conclude, I just want to take a minute to really appreciate all of the participants in NAEP, the principals, the teachers, the students that take the time, whether it's just 15 minutes or a few hours if you're a teacher and have to collect information. But we're so grateful for your participation because, again, it's such a valuable resource. At the end of the day, we're able to contextualize achievement data in a way that we couldn't possibly do reliably or validly unless we had your participation. So thank you for that. And we hope that this conversation will encourage you to take a look at our questionnaire results. As Jamie mentioned, all of these data are publicly available. The questionnaires themselves are publicly available. So if you go to NCES's website, you're able to find the survey questions. Please take a look. And also look at our data tools. In our data tools, you'll find all of the results that we discussed, in our special report. So again, we hope that you engage with this resource. So you can check us out at nationsreportcard.gov, or you can also just look us up in our NCS website. There's much more information about our development process and the components of NAEP that, again, is available for you. And so at this time, I would like to thank both Principal Graves and Dr. Deaton for having this wonderful discussion with us. And again, thank you for your participation tonight. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ebony.